Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Go With Your Gut podcast. I am your host, Lauren Dreher, and today we have special guest Joann Pariah here. And before we get started, let me just talk about how much she has accomplished. She calls herself a Renaissance woman, which I would agree with, knowing what I know about her. She is the jack of all trades and masters of all of them. She is currently a career assessment transition coach for Finding Your Purpose, an author of The Unabashed Truths the Entertainment Industry Won't Tell You, a guide to the business of acting. She is a speaker, announcer, marketing consultant for the performing arts, retired corporate government software developer, and retired figure skating coach. And on top of all that, she currently owns 2 small businesses. Just, that's nothing. You don't do anything. That's crazy.
Don't.
So we are incredibly fortunate that she has she's here spending some time with us today. And I think the knowledge and the experiences that she can enlighten us with today and share are going to be amazing and helping everybody be able to do this on their own as well. So I wanted to get started with essentially talking about kind of going against that grain, because I've felt a lot recently that everybody, society, whoever you want to talk about, tries to put us in that box of here's what you should do, here's what you should look like, all of those things. So let's talk about how you have dealt with that going against the grain when everybody wants to should on you. You should do this, this, and this. So let's talk about some of that.
Okay, well, Lauren, thank you first for having me on your podcast. I really appreciate it. And I'm grateful. Well, it is very hard to segregate yourself out from what you should be doing, what people tell you're supposed to do. But in order to get away from that, you then have to really master yourself. Okay, you have to learn to appreciate yourself. And just like with your book, Go With Your Gut, you have to really get inside. And it's hard because we hear all of those negative voices telling us, and those other people saying, oh, you shouldn't be doing that, or this is what you should be doing. And what it does is it stifles us.
Yep.
So this was a long process, of many years. And then also of having that, kind of like, I didn't come from a positive family structure. So there was no strength behind me. I had to figure this out myself. And I sometimes think we are born with innate abilities and we have to find them, because that's, I think, what made me go from step to step from, oh, I want to do this. And then something tragic happens that I couldn't control. So I have to change the trajectory. And it's all about mastering ourselves and understanding ourselves and trying to really say, all right, I'm not going to use my New York, I don't care what you think. I'm good with myself, and then also find people that support you. I mean, there's so many people out there that don't want to support you. Because again, we've got that negative vibration of, oh my God, if you succeed, what does that mean for me?
It's almost like that thing of there's not enough room for everybody, instead of, we're all here to do the thing that we're supposed to be doing. And in my opinion, yeah, sometimes that can change regarding on the season, but let's not tear each other down, because that doesn't help anybody. And honestly, for me, I feel like that's an ego thing.
Oh, it absolutely is. well, you know what it is it's not only an ego thing, it's insecurity.
Yeah.
You know, people who are really competitive, and I don't mean in sports, that's a different issue,
Right.
but people who will criticize something that you've done, it's really, they're being judgmental. And judgment is not a positive thing. Judgment is our own insecurities coming out. So that's really, the negative. And, it's easier to be negative than positive. I mean, I will always say, I could just drop my phone and it's much easier for me to do that than to hold it.
Mm-hmm.
And so it takes energy to be positive and to hold it up high.
It absolutely does. And I feel like that's just kind of a general like population thing is like you said, it's so much easier to hear something and your brain's just like, oh, this is why it's not going to work out, or this is the part that sucks about it, right? Instead of saying, and sometimes we don't want to hear the silver lining. Sometimes I need somebody to look at me and say, yeah, that does suck. I'm sorry that happened.
But
exactly.
Exactly. That's that all, there's always good from bad. And that is not what we're taught also. And I guess, unfortunately, right now, the whole vibration of the world, people I speak to, oh, I don't have energy, I don't have this. And a lot of it is because of what is going on around us. We absorb it all in. But it really is, it's sad. So I think the whole thing of today, or the way to really go forward, is to teach people really to be kind.
Yeah.
And to learn how to fail, because if you don't fail, you won't succeed.
So let me ask you, do you have either an example of where you failed forward, or just how you learned from that?
Okay, absolutely. Where I failed forward. Okay, there you go. I got that for you, baby.
Let's hear it.
Okay. Of course, this is when I was younger. I wanted to be a lawyer. And what happened is my trajectory, in the sense of, circumstances, but not just circumstances. So I wanted to go to law school. But what I recognized is I also wanted to see what it's like, because that's the key too. You think you want to be something, and maybe that's not for you. So I went and I worked in a law firm as a paralegal. However, I don't test well. So it's very different for this generation of today. Yeah. So guess what happened? I couldn't get into law school, or a law school I wanted.
There you go.
So then what I did is I went to graduate school, thinking getting a graduate degree in public administration would help me then apply to law school and get in. Well, I still didn't test well. And that's never going to change. So what ended up happening is, as I knew that, even when I was in graduate school, I started seeing that technology interested me. So I kind of focused on information systems, and I focused on, because I thought I'd go into judicial administration. But I knew that that wasn't going to happen by the time I was at the end of my degree. Because again, I wanted to go to a good law school, because I knew, fortunately or unfortunately, in terms of your graduate degrees, in terms of being a doctor, in terms of being a lawyer, those professions, your school matters. Okay. Yep. So I finally accepted, I'm not going to law school. Okay. I mean, that. So instead, I liked technology. I liked to program. I liked information. And so I said, okay, that's what I'm going to go do. And then hence I had a 20-year career in software development and speaking and writing and blah, blah. So there I had to change, because what was I going to keep going? And also I got to a certain point where, oh God, I'm not going to keep going to school and trying to do this. And I need to take care of myself. I need to pay bills. I wanted to move into Manhattan. So that's a prime example.
So that leads me into something that I love to talk about, because it seems to me, and I am a great example of this as well, is we kind of get stuck onto, like you said, that this is what I want to do. And we almost can't get it out of our head. And so we do almost everything we can to force it and say, this is what I'm going to do. And there's something to be said, yes, for, working hard and figuring it out. But there's also, I think, something to be said for, like you said, okay, this is not where I'm meant to go. Let's go this other direction, recalibrate. And it takes you in a place that you never would have thought.
That's right.
But is absolutely amazing. And you figure out that you love something else and that you're good at something else.
There you go. And and that's what I try to do for people, because that's what I'm doing. And it that's really what it is. And it changes. It changes every 5 years. There was somebody who I read, decades ago, that said you should always have a 5-year plan, so that it does change. And it also, again, comes back to mastering within yourself, saying, okay, this is the way I'm going to end up going. And then that's why I like helping people find their talents and their gifts, because that then gives them the purpose. And then that helps them. It also helps them see. I mean, sometimes, when I was a figure skating coach, you sometimes had to be like blatantly honest. Do not waste your money on me. Do not think that your child is going to be a competitive skater. I'm sorry. Just make them a recreational skater and find another hobby. That's why I'm the unabashed truth lady,
I love that about you, because I feel like I'm a little bit like that. And sometimes it takes the harsh truth.
It will, yeah. And people don't want to hear it.
No.
People do not want to hear the truth. And so then that's why, hence, since I could be like, I have all my wisdom in my years, I sometimes when I even hear my children, my sons, I'm kind of like, well, be careful with that. Because, unless it's business related, and unless you're in a corporation and there were times when I used to say, you're wasting money here, and they didn't listen to me. And then 6 months later, oh my God, we found out we wasted this money in that. Where's the letter that you wrote? And, and that's honestly why I became a consultant, because they didn't want to hear the truth. At least when you're a consultant, you can tell they're paying you to hear the truth. And then you're not going to lose your job because of it. It's like, here, this is what you should do. And if you don't like it, fine, I have been mocked. And this is, unfortunately, again, there's so much out there, and we're right now just, because of COVID, because of what's going on in the world, a lot of people are scared. They're insecure, more insecure than ever. So we try to grab onto something that, may not work.
That is absolutely true. And kind of leads me into where I wanted to go next, because I'm horrible about this and I'm trying to be better. Right now, and I don't know about just right now. However, I, including a lot of people, overthink and second guess what I'm doing. And at one point, it kind of takes me back to, okay, I'm second guessing myself and I'm overthinking this. What does that gut tell me to go with?
And that's what it really is you have to, and that's a hard thing. It is, because again, what does that come back to? Knowing yourself, and feeling comfortable with yourself. But because most of us have not come from supportive families, from reading your book, you did. So that's a positive. I look at my children, they did. But when you don't come from supportive families, you still have that little negative person behind there, even though you're saying, okay, I'm overthinking, should I, shouldn't I? And you still have that little negative person because you were raised with, oh, you don't deserve it, or oh, what's the matter with you? And you really have to get rid of that. There's a real way, and it's hard. Oh, at that, I call that the demon,
Yeah.
That's the demon that you have to battle. But when you battle it in every situation, because trust me, it never goes away.
No.
This will never go away. Second guessing ourselves will never go away. We just have to start becoming more comfortable with our decisions. And there's never a wrong decision. Once we start doing that in our minds, it really helps us move ahead. Because yes, there is a what if scenario. Okay, so you do your what if scenario and you go through it and you say, well, okay, they're not so bad. And you have to, and this is, I'm a meditator. I pray. I do all of the things to help that negative voice go away.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I completely agree with you. And kind of like you said, I did grow up with a very supportive family, and I still have that negative thing up here, which some of that might be my high anxiety, because that's a thing. But
well, I can talk to you about high anxiety like forever.
But it's so true what you say, because it used to really bug me that I'm like, okay, and this is probably just in my last couple of years after I figured out that there was that anxiety piece, because I was always thinking, okay, I've made it through this. Why is that? Like, I've told that voice to sit down and shut up. Why is it still there? And I have learned rather quickly, not that I want to accept it, that it really does not go away. It's, here's the next thing I want to do. Here's the next space I'm going to go to. Oh, that voice is back.
Yep.
Oh, it's sitting there telling me you can't do it. And
right.
It's
and
perfect.
You can, and and basically, yes, you came from a supportive family, but from what I read, outside you didn't, and that affects us too.
Yep.
We could have, although because you are, in my mind's eye, you are successful, from what I see, that little voice, because it also is the environment around us and whatever our experiences have been, and what happened. And anxiety really is, it's okay. Pop psychologists are not giving anybody advice, but anxiety really is the fear of the future.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And or the fear of a result.
Yeah.
And so you have to tell yourself, what is the worst that's gonna happen? And no, this voice, it doesn't go away. And the anxiety doesn't go away. Sometimes you can tell that voice to go away, but you still feel that stuff rushing through your bloodstream.
Yeah.
And, and there are studies coming out that it has to do with our DNA. There's all this stuff changing, which I like. I hope I get to see a lot of it. That instead of it really, it's your DNA. It's basically, if you, again, pop psychology from reading, I read a lot, usually alcoholics are full of anxiety. They drink because they are numbing the anxiety.
Yep.
Okay. Or drug addicts, and so we've sort of passed this down from generation to generation, and that I sometimes believe it just gets in our bloodstream. I mean, because the smartest of successful people I know have anxiety, and I don't believe, there are drugs out there to take, but
so that kind of, I want to ask about this because, right, well, all of the time, but especially I think it is so prominent right now with that unknown that's terrifying, right?
Yes,
Because everybody, not everybody, so many people want to be certain. They want that safety net, and it takes it takes, I would say, the word courage, whether anybody else wants to use that or not. It takes courage to find your comfort zone in the unknown and get comfortable with that. And honestly, that's kind of how I have learned to function a little bit. Is I have zero control over what actually happens. I can plan the heck out of anything, but heck, if I know what's going to happen tomorrow.
That's right. Man plans and God laughs.
Exactly.
And what you have to, and that is also, it really is, you know, an integral part of everything we're talking about, is you really have to be comfortable with the unknown.
Yeah.
And it's not comforting.
No.
Okay. And we all want to be in control. Oh, the people I've worked with that want control completely. And I've decided, let it go. You know, it is that whole serenity prayer thing.
Yeah.
You know, and that's when you start feeling a little less anxious. That's when that's when you can contain that little negative guy that keeps coming, you know, every so often. But yeah, we all just want to be in control, but yet, you know, we also don't want to have control sometimes, or at least the general population.
Yeah. Oh, and I like to do this thing. I don't know if you've experienced this, called blame, where I blame everything else for for what happens or all of that. And I'm like, okay, you know, it is what it is, and things will happen. And we don't like to, whether it was our fault or not, however things happen, we don't like to take responsibility for, well, much of anything.
Right. No, we don't. We've turned into, no, I mean, that is one of the biggest things right now. We don't want to take responsibility. We want to blame somebody else because it's more comfortable. If I take responsibility, it again, then means I have to lift up this phone. And I don't know why I'm using the phone. I should hear this. You know, it means that I have to do something. And we've turned into a society of, well, mommy and daddy will take care of everything. You know, I mean, this new generation, from what I understand, and I was an older parent, so it was even hard for me to see how people were raising their kids.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, now you're not allowed to say the word no to a 2-year-old. I mean,
that's all mine hears.
Right. I mean, and then we just blame everybody else.
Yeah.
You know, oh, it's this fault. It's because of this. No, sometimes there is no blame. And then sometimes we have to ask ourselves, but people don't. We are in the blame game society. It's, you know, it's the president's fault. It's Trump's fault. It's this person's fault. It's that, you know.
So tell me if you've experienced this, because this is usually how I can figure out if I'm in the right or if I need to readjust myself, is when I decide whose fault something is, when something does go wrong, you got that thing, that knot in your stomach. Most of the time, it's probably called guilt, because you know in your gut that that was not the right thing to do.
Oh, that's right. Oh, that's a tough one. And so wait, keep going. I don't want to interrupt you.
Oh no, I'm just thinking here that then we have that little, my gut instinct of, yeah, that wasn't right, but I don't really care. And I'm going to go do it. And then it starts doing this thing where it eats at you because you didn't make it right. You knew you were wrong. And now you got the guilt still there, but now you got a little negative spiral going on in there because, and I mean, heck, half the stuff, it's not even a big deal.
Right. But then take yourself back to one step. So, and see if I'm understanding properly. So basically, you didn't do something that maybe you thought you should have done. But if you did do what you thought you should have done, would it have changed things? So that's where you then have to say, you know what, I didn't do that. And would it have really changed the situation? Maybe not. See, we always got to get that positive back in us.
Yep.
So that we're not always thinking that negative. And we're in such a negative state right now, a negative culture. But sometimes there are things, oh, woulda, shoulda, coulda. And sometimes, and then there are times, well, maybe I should have done that. Next time I'll learn.
Yep.
You have to take everything as a learning. We're always learning. We learn until we die. Yeah. Unless we just don't want to learn. Listen, there are plenty of people that don't learn, because they just continually make the same mistake. And again, that's like, what's the definition of insanity? Doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result.
Absolutely. The other thing I wanted to ask you, because I think it's so important for a lot of people these days, and it's a little bit of a gear shift. You and I were talking before this call about having gifts, or the purpose that we have to figure out a way how to use it. Mm-hmm. And sometimes maybe that way is not exactly how we envisioned it. And life takes us in different ways. And as I like to say, it takes us on that very scary weed journey of the road less traveled. So how has this played out for you?
Oh, okay. Well, again, every, how do I put this? Every plan necessarily in my life that I have made, then an outside circumstance changed the trajectory. And, ultimately, again, finding your talents and gifts, as there are standardized ways of doing it, that at least can, which I do, which you can at least then kind of hone in.
Yeah.
Okay. And here's an example. Okay. When I went through, because I've been through the whole self-directed search process, I did it over 10 years ago. And I recognized in that self-directed search process, it said, oh, you should be an actress. Oh, you should be, they never said be a lawyer. Okay. They never said software developer. Okay. But when I was in software development, so this is where you're taking this trajectory and then taking your gifts and talents, okay, that are coming out naturally. See, I wish I had taken these self-directed tests 30 years ago, okay? But was I unhappy with what I was doing? No. What ended up happening is, let's say the speaking skills or the acting skills came out because I spoke at conferences. Mm-hmm. I then trained people. So that's that part of it, because it does say, oh, you'd be a good, trainer, coach, psychologist, blah, 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 social worker. And so I took those same skills, good communicator, was a manager, hated managing people, but that's a whole other story. But I kind of took those, and I like to help people. So what was I doing? I was helping in those days, because technology was very different in the 80s and 90s. Mm-hmm. There was no such thing as mobile phones, apps, anything. You had to create them from scratch.
Yep.
So I then conducted workshops that took the communication skills. So I was able to take what the talents and gifts I had and repurpose them into this career that also made good money because you live in the New York metro area. That's what it's all about. I mean, so that's how I kind of did it. And I did it not knowing, but I also did it by reading a lot, because in those days, all you had were books. You didn't have the internet.
Yep.
But that's kind of what I did. I'm still doing it. It will never stop.
Yeah. But I love that story because it's such a process of, okay, well, here's what I have. How can I make this work? And how can I figure it out? Because we're told so many things of, like I said at the beginning, do this, do that. And I mean, can you do all of them? Can you do some of them? Absolutely. But it's using some of those gifts to figure out how you can thrive. And sometimes, it's scary to do that unknown thing. It's scary to do something that a lot of people may not agree with. It's scary to do something that you have no idea whether it's going to work out or not, right?
Right.
And all of those things. But it's that going with that gut of, here's what I can do. Here's what I know. I'm going to go for it and see what happens. If it takes me in a different direction, okay.
That's right.
But let's see where it goes. And,
right.
Sometimes we fail, but you have to fail at some things.
Well, you have to fail in
Succeed.
order to move forward.
Yes.
I mean, that's what most people are afraid of, though. There's also the fear of success.
Yes.
Because when you're successful, you then have to keep it up.
Yes.
But I guess that's why for my last whatever, because I don't know what, that's why I love it. I'll say it if anyone listens, go on the internet and just Google self-directed search. It's a cheap, I think they have a fee. I make nothing off of it, of like $15 or $9.95. And it's kind of like the Own It. That one is free, but it's much better. So it will take your personality, your talents and your gifts, okay, that you like doing. Because remember, that's the key. Do you like doing them?
Yep.
And it puts it into John Holland's RISEC, which is, where am I? Realistic, investigative, social. Oh God, I really should have this all memorized. But they give you a whole test proven by John Holland, and then you come out with the results, and then you can search for jobs that have your talents and gifts.
Yeah, that's like a huge thing.
It is a huge thing. I found out, in all honesty, about this over 10 years ago. I always wanted to, again, I wanted to do that, but my trajectory had changed or circumstances didn't allow it. So to me, that's like the first step. I mean, even my kids did it when they were in college. Okay. And then one of my sons did, because I do what's called purpose cards.
Mm-hmm.
Those you have to do in person. And that's where one of my sons said, I'm not for corporate America.
Yeah.
And just like, you may be sitting at a desk job, but you really need to move.
Yeah.
So that's to me, that's like the first step. And then you go and you look and then you try it,
Yep.
Sometimes there are innate things. Like I always did internships in college. Remember, I went a long time ago, and graduate school. And that's how I learned.
Yep.
So, and you have to fail. I mean, you have to, and once we recognize, and that's the unfortunate thing, we are growing up, and it's getting worse, with parents that can't handle their children's failures. In all honesty, I believe that's why kids are not being taught to fail, because we can't handle it.
Yep.
And you have to be able to, because that's life.
Yeah, it is.
And you have to work hard.
Yeah.
Nothing, yes, some people have it easier than others, and some people have it harder than others.
Yep.
But it really is that whole failure thing that you said. And it's just a learning experience.
Yep. Well, we are at our time, I believe. Thank you so much for being on with me today.
Thank you for having me.
Great. And everybody, I will put in the show notes where you can find her. And as always, go with your gut and then keep going.